Aloha folks, what's going on? Thanks for coming back to the channel. If you're new, please like and subscribe. This video is the part one of a multi-part series. I haven't decided how many parts it's going to be, but it is a series intended to take people who are very green, super beginner, people who have just purchased a firearm or never really held one before, through skills, through basic skills, all the way up to the ultra operator, super tactical guys like myself, which I'm not at all, but just through the spectrum of basic skills up to more advanced ones. And these videos are going to be very rough, super raw, unedited, maybe a little bit editing, but I lost a ton of content that I spent days and days and days editing, and I'm super frustrated, but I'm trying to just make the best out of it and make lemonade out of lemons, or whatever the English saying is. But here you go. So part one of this series: firearm safety and how to clear a firearm. It goes without saying that you need to be extremely diligent and purposeful and careful around firearms. These tools, this is clear. My mag well has nothing in it. My chamber has nothing in it. These tools are extremely potent. They can change lives in an instant, and they're not something that to be taken lightly. They're not something to be trifled with or treated with disrespect, recklessness, ignorance. There's no space for any of that. So get educated on how to safely operate these guys. I don't think that watching a YouTube video is enough. I'm gonna do my best, hopefully open the door for you folks, but please find somebody knowledgeable and reputable in your area who can physically take you through the steps of teaching you how to be safe with firearms. It only takes you one mistake, or one lapse of it. It only takes you one time to lose big. So they're not something to be taken lightly. And there's a ton of people who own firearms that straight up shouldn't even have them. Like, super dangerous people, and not dangerous in the sense that they're going to be like committing crimes or hurting people, but dangerous in the sense that they have access to and own these potent tools, and they are just not careful with them at all, and that endangers themselves and people all around. It just, like Tiger King, pretty much everyone on Tiger King is like kind of what I'm talking about, and I won't even get started with that. But anyway, firearm safety is extremely important. You have to have a mindset that's very grounded in safety, and like just paranoid about safety and redundancy. And a lot of things I'm going to tell you folks about today on this video is going to sound extremely repetitive and redundant, and it is, but it's about setting you in, like I said, a mental state that's grounded in safety, and forming habits and motor engrams that are going to bring you back to safety in times of duress, or like if what you're naturally going to react to is coming back to this very safe base, instead of being like flippant about whatever's going on, like whatever, it's fine, because safety is number one. So anyway, there are a number of firearm safety rules, and depending where you learn them from, who you heard them from, they might be worded differently, but I'm going to teach you folks what we teach in our firearms safety class. And the number one rule that we're going to start with is always keep your firearm pointed in a safe direction. You may also hear this worded as treat every firearm as if it's loaded, and know the condition of your firearm. But if you're speaking to people who have never handled a firearm before, how do you know how to handle one that's as if it's loaded? So we teach always keep your firearm pointed in the safe direction. And a safe direction is something that you're going to designate yourself. As you look around, look to see if there's anything that is going to be severely affected by the projectile that comes out of this if it were to fire in that direction. You never point this in the direction of anything that you're not intending to stick a hole through. So that obviously includes people, animals, houses, objects. Like, you think about those things, and those are pretty it's pretty easy to keep your mind wrapped around that. But another thing that entails that people tend to forget about is yourself. Not in the sense of like doing this kind of thing, but just passing body parts in front of the muzzle. So the barrel, the front end of your firearm is called the muzzle, and pointing that at somebody or something is called muzzling or flagging, and you'll hear that within firearm circles. And you guys over there, my awesome subscribers, are not actually in front of me. You're in like somewhere in the world through a computer screen. And some people get all like crazy about me pointing the gun at you. I'm not. I'm putting it on camera. So this view that you see right here, this scary view with this thing pointing at you, this is, you are being flagged right now. So you want to make sure that your firearm is always pointing in a safe direction and you're not flagging anybody. This is especially important to be wary about when you're dealing with handguns, as they're small and it's easy to be like pointing this guy all over the place when you're talking or whatever, which we'll go into later of how to safely position things and handle them. But with a long gun like a rifle or shotgun, it's a little bit more easy to be cognizant of where the muzzle's pointing, because it's such a big thing. So number one, always keep your firearm pointed in a safe direction. Number two, always keep your finger off the trigger until you are ready to fire. And off the trigger means up on the frame here like this. A lot of new shooters, you'll see when they're shooting at the range or whatever they're shooting, they got their finger inside the trigger guard and they're pulling the trigger, and when they stop, they will keep their finger inside of the trigger guard here. Maybe not on the trigger, but in the trigger guard. And this doesn't work very well, because the way that our body is made, through our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, your body wants to work like in balance. And if there's any type of like flinch or, you know, reactive action taken by you like this, with your squeezing with your left hand, you're going to want to do it with your other hand. So it's important that you keep your finger off the trigger and up on the frame so that your finger has somewhere to go. Well, it doesn't have anywhere to go. Actually, it's going to brace against the frame, and you're not have it down here, because I guarantee you, if you're real lazy about this guy and you have it off the trigger but it's in here, if you know you're running a practical shooting course or something, or you know something happens, your fingers are going to come in here, guarantee. I guarantee that. And actually, there's a video that's going around that I just saw recently of a guy shooting at the range, and he gets brass down his shirt, and instead of putting his firearm down and dealing with the brass, he's over here trying to deal with it, and he actually ends up pulling the trigger and shooting and letting off 2 shots behind him and almost hit somebody. So it's very important that you keep your finger off the trigger at all times until you're ready to fire. And what I like to do is I find something physical on the frame of my firearm that I can use as an index. So with my 1911, I have the other side of my takedown lever here that I can kind of, you know, I can feel it with my pointing finger, and that's a reminder for me of this is a good place to put it. Your firearm is going to differ. With my Beretta, I have kind of the same thing going here. I can use this, and Glocks are all pretty much the same, or all the same actually, and they also have a takedown. The takedown lever right here that you can use as an index. So keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to fire. Number 3, always keep your firearm unloaded until you're ready to use it. And that can be a little bit difficult for people to get their mind wrapped around. You know, some people in our classes will say, you know, what if I'm using it for home defense? It has to be ready, you know, this and that. And that's true. So I'll go ahead and I'll refine that a little bit in saying always keep your firearm unloaded until you're in a state or a situation where you need it to be ready. So that means these are snap caps. They're inert, they're plastic, they're not real. So this is loaded, pretend this is loaded with live cartridges. I am never going to have my firearm hot, meaning that this is in the chamber ready to fire, or just magazine in like this and laying around. Okay, that's not safe, because this is just cruising around like this. I have no reason to be ready with it like this. If I'm carrying it for personal protection, it should be in a holster and it should be on my person. Okay, if I'm using it for home defense, it can be loaded with a magazine inside, and it can also be ready to go with one in the chamber, but it's going to be in a safe, or it's going to be, you know, somewhere where you designate that you know that that's where it is and it's hot and it's ready, and that's where you're going to use it. But do not, under any circumstances, leave any firearms with live ammunition and just like strewn around like that. That's not cool. Like, firearms, in my opinion and how I run it, firearms always live either in holsters like this on your person, or they're put away in the safe. Okay, if you are you know, at the range and you're working or something, you always lock your slide back like this and place it down on the chamber, on the table with the ejection port facing up. That way you can see visually that this firearm is clear. So now that we've gone over the firearm safety rules, I'm going to tell you folks how to clear your firearm. And this might be a little bit advanced if I'm speaking to somebody who has never, ever touched a firearm before, but you need to understand how to clear a firearm, how to make your firearm safe before we can move forward. Okay, so how to make your firearm safe. You first need to know the controls for your firearm, and that's gonna differ from person to person. But generally on a semi-automatic, there's gonna be a button that releases the magazine. And in the case of this 1911, it's right here. On a Glock, it's in the same place. Okay, got one right here like this. And on a Beretta, it is also in the same place. And just look for it, and you'll see that there's a lever, there's a button there that you can push, and pushing that button will release your magazine. So we got to know where that guy is, and you also need to know where your slide stop lever is, and that's this guy right here in this 1911. And they're generally all in the same place on semi-automatics. And the purpose of that is when the follower on your magazine, on an empty magazine, pushes up without a round in it, it's going to lock the slide back like this. Okay, that's what you need to know how to do. So moving on, how to make a firearm safe, how to clear a firearm. So what you're going to do, pretend we have a firearm here that has a round in the magazine, or it doesn't. You don't know. Okay, you don't know. We're going to clear it. We're going to make it safe. So the first thing you do is, per our firearm safety rules, make sure that your firearm is pointing in the safe direction. For me, safe direction is this way. I have a wall here. I got a hill on the other side. Nothing bad's gonna happen besides a little bit of drywall touch up if somehow a bullet were to exit my barrel here. So keep your firearm pointing in the safe direction. I'm going to use my mag release button, drop my magazine, then I'm going to pull the slide back like this. Okay? Pull the slide, pump it a couple times, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to lock it back by pushing up on the slide stop. And then I visually check the chamber, I visually check the mag well, and I tactily with my finger check the chamber and check the mag well. You could, when you're pumping it like this, that's generally going to make your cartridge come out if there is one in there, like this. Okay, you see it came out. But if you have a broken extractor, something's broken, there's a possibility that something could stay in there. So you want to check with your eyes and your fingers. So once I've done that, this firearm is safe. This is how I clear a firearm. Okay, now our firearm is safe. A couple things that I do to keep myself safe and keep in this like not weird, but this very redundant like safety habit, which is so important with shooters. I know I could talk all day about redundancy and how it seems stupid, but when it comes to safety, it's not. Some of the things I do are, for one, I never ever, and these are my own rules. These are my own rules. You as a shooter, as you come up with come up in skill, you're gonna find your own way, but just some ideas for you folks. Some of the things that I do to keep safety on the top of the list is I never ever have live ammo in magazines like around. The only place I'll have live ammo in a magazine is in the magazine, loaded and like packed in my range bag because it's ready to go, or the magazine will be loaded and it'll be in my like home defense firearm, which is then in its designated area, or in my firearm and in my holster. But I don't leave magazines with live ammo like around. That's number one. Number two, I secure my firearms, and it's very important that you as a firearm owner secure your firearms. And that means like secure your firearms. It doesn't mean like stick it in your sock drawer like those condoms you got in the 5th grade when you went to sex ed or whatever. Like, your sock drawer is not gonna cut it. Like, under your pillow is not gonna cut it. You gotta put it in a safe place away from unauthorized individuals. And an unauthorized individual is anybody that doesn't have permission to be touching your firearm, or anyone that you don't who you don't know is touching your firearm. So of course, like burglars and stuff, but it could also be like your wife or your girlfriend or your kid or your brother, just people that you don't give explicit permission to handle your firearm. That's an unauthorized user. So get a safe, get a case with locks, secure your firearm. Okay, these are not things to be taken lightly. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Secure your firearm. It doesn't, sock drawers, pillowcases, whiskey cases, it doesn't fly. Secure your firearm safely. Okay, that's number two. Number three, something that I do all the time, and then a lot of the guys that I work with are like, well, you know, it's kind of weird, is my rule: anytime I pick up a firearm, I'm going to clear it, even if it's my own, and even if I just put it down. So case in point, if I have a firearm here and it's my firearm and I'm at the range and I'm instructing somebody, I'm talking, this firearm most of the time will go back into my holster, okay, because I know that anything in my holster is hot and ready to go. That's my own rule. When I pull it out of my holster, I'm going to use it, I'm going to put it back in my holster when I'm done. If for whatever reason I end up putting my firearm down on the table, I get talking to somebody, when I pick this gun up, I'm going to clear it, pick out my magazine, I'm going to drop the slide, check inside, check my finger, check everything, and then make it safe. I do that all the time. That makes it a habit for me. Anytime I see a gun anywhere, any place, at a gun store, at someone else's house, anytime I see a gun, my habit, what I revert back to, what's ingrained in me, is that I'm going to pick this guy up, safe direction, pull out the magazine, rack this guy, and make sure that it's safe. Okay, that's redundancy, that's safety for me. Another thing that I do is when I hand a gun to somebody, I also clear it. And this is good for you to know as shooters coming up, as you get into the world of shooting and world of firearms, how to properly hand off a firearm is like this. So I will make it safe. I will clear my firearm. Safe direction. You know, if you're standing at a counter at a gun store, safe direction down. Okay, I'm going to pull out my magazine, rack my slide. Okay, then I lock it to the rear. Make sure everything's good. I'm going to grab the frame and I'm going to hand it to the other person like this, just like a knife. Like if you hand off a knife, you grab the blade and you hand them the handle like that, the grip. So the same thing. I will grab my frame, muzzle's pointed down in a safe direction, and I hand it off to the other person, just like this. Okay. When I receive a firearm, I also do the same thing. Even if it's locked back like this, I will grab it because now it's in my possession, and I will make sure the magazine's empty. I will check it and I will make it safe. Then the magazine goes in and it goes in my holster or wherever it needs to go. But anytime I pass it off, anytime I receive it, I always clear my firearm. And again, that's super redundant, like very repetitive. But like I said in the beginning, it only takes you one time to lose or one time to forget, and it can be really bad. So come up with your own processes, your own policies, whatever, your personal policies when it comes to making firearms safe. But remember your 3 firearm safety rules. Always keep your firearm pointing in the safe direction. Always keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to fire. And always keep your firearm unloaded until you're ready to use. If you do those 3 things, you will greatly reduce, almost completely down to 0, the likelihood of anything bad happening to you, because we do need to be safe with these guys. So I know that was a really long video, but it had to be said. It was really important. Kick this thing off the right way. Firearm safety and how to clear a firearm. Part 1 done. Come back for part 2. Haven't decided what I'm going to call it, but it'll be coming up right now. Thanks. See you guys later.